Hi and welcome back to the latest episode of the Valencia Property Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our special last month and our interview with John Wolfendale about sustainable building practices and how things are slowly changing in Spain towards more sustainable building methods and materials. And if you haven't listened to it, then of course you can find the link in the show notes. This month we continue to be the only podcast out there not sponsored by NordVPN, HelloFresh or some form of crypto bro scam, and continue to be forthright, independent and, just like Steve Davis, interesting. One for the Brit kids out there with a shout out to the 80s and spitting image. This month on the podcast, we'll be looking back at the first 2 months of the year, which have flown by, really, and telling you about what everyone is looking for, judging by our analytics on our website. We'll also be telling you about our aborted attempt to move servers last month, which meant the website was down for almost a whole weekend, and about our further attempt to move this week. But first, the overview. Less than a month left to apply for the Golden Visa now, as it ends on the 3rd of April for sure, and for once this isn't the Spanish government crying wolf, it's actually happening. We have people visiting this month who have bought previously to make their application in person via a recommended lawyer, and a couple of clients coming over in the hope of managing to apply with an agreed price and signed contract for purchase. We wrote a blog about how to do that, of course you can find it in the show notes. All hands on deck to help people get there, because once it's gone, it's gone. There are other types of visa available, of course, and we wrote about that in a post you can find in the show notes. And after the 3rd of April, there will be the visas you'll have to use. So as the world goes to hell in a handcart, it's good to know that there is some sanity prevailing, even if that doesn't include our ex-friends in the USA, until you actually take up arms against that clown in the White House and his whole coterie. I believe the French have a history of fighting back against unaccountable elites, and as Louisiana used to be French, if you're looking for somewhere to start, then they may have a few old unused guillotines lying around, ready to be taken to Washington and sharpened. Spain is looking like a rather sane bulwark against the forces of Putin massing around the world via disinformation and fat orange presidents, and with the largest growing economy in Europe in terms of percentage rises, and a relatively sane political system, we hope to keep it that way. That's not even mentioning the quality of life and cost of living here. However, we did mention that in one of our posts in January. We didn't mention our posts in the last podcast, so let's have a quick chat about Valencia, cost of living and quality of life. When we get asked the question, how affordable is Valencia, or how much does it cost to live there per month, the answer's always the same. It depends. It depends on you, it depends on your family circumstances, it depends on what you do and how you live. But generally, the answer is always a similar, well, it's cheaper than where you are now. We always look at the website Numbeo to get up-to-date figures on the cost of living, and also intangible benefits of living in a place, such as healthcare, climate, safety, amongst other things. So let's take a look without comparisons, shall we? Going out to eat a menú del día will cost you around 15 to 18 euros per head these days. The cinema will cost around 9 euros, milk is around 1 euro, 12 eggs, 2.50, and I know that for Americans that sounds ridiculously cheap. A mid-range bottle of wine is under 5 euros, a cappuccino costs you 2 euros, bananas are around 1.50 a kilo, chicken is around 7 or 8 euros a kilo, and beer is just, well, it's just cheap. The basics are still good, even though to us here they may look more expensive than 4 years ago, because of course, most things are more expensive than 4 years ago. One of the great things about the website Numbeo is that they always rank non-financial factors as quality of life, and Valencia ranks fantastically on this scale. What constitutes quality of life? Well, Valencia ranks high where it wants to rank highly in terms of safety, healthcare and climate, and it ranks low where ranking high would be a negative, such as cost of living, property price to income ratio, traffic commute and pollution. It also ranks well for crime and safety, with crime levels low in general and violent crimes being very low. Being able to walk safely on the streets is also an excellent consideration. On a national level, Valencia is much cheaper than Barcelona and Madrid, and is also better in terms of intangible quality of life factors. But it's when we come to the international comparisons that we get to realise how lucky we are to live here. When we start to look more internationally, then we tend to look at places where our clients come from. In the last edition of this, in 2021, we talked about Amsterdam, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and London, for example. And of course, all of them are much more expensive to live in than Valencia, meaning Valencia looks very affordable to our clients from these places, especially if they are bringing their current income with them, whether that's through their jobs, investments, or pensions. However, taking into account the basic numbers, we get some surprises. Amsterdam, for example, despite the high cost of living, has a local purchasing power much higher than Valencia. But if you're bringing that income from Amsterdam to Valencia, then the cost of living reduces massively, whilst at the same time quality of life increases exponentially. This is not the case with London though. Despite much higher wages, the local purchasing power in London and Valencia is essentially the same, taking into account wages and costs. Again, if you bring your current income with you from London, then Valencia becomes hugely attractive. However, if you really want to see a massive difference, then we need to look at the differences between Valencia and the USA, starting with New York. Everything is cheaper in Valencia, and even local purchasing power is higher despite New York's much higher salaries. Obviously, if you can reduce your rental costs by 76% and your general cost of living by 59%, then your money goes a lot further. And maybe that even allows you to not really worry about any extra tax burdens. We've talked about that on the blog, and again, there's a link in the show notes. Nevertheless, San Francisco, for example, is a bit different. Local purchasing power in Valencia is a lot worse than in San Francisco, and this is because of average wages being really high in San Francisco. Again though, if you bring that huge salary, or even a proportion of it, to Valencia, then you'll feel even better off than a New Yorker. Even when we consider that Valencia ranks really well in terms of local purchasing power, especially when bringing income from elsewhere, life is about more than money though, isn't it? As we saw, Valencia ranks very highly on the Quality of Life Index, with a score just over 200. How does this compare with other places mentioned earlier? The only place that beats Valencia is Amsterdam, with a score of 203. And let's face it, if we look at the climate, then we wipe the floor with Amsterdam. New York compares extremely badly with Valencia, despite those high salaries. As we said, there's more to life than money, despite what a certain Mr. Trump might think. If we choose to look at Valencia and its prices over the last few years, then there's no doubt that prices have risen, just like everywhere in the world over that time. You can see the trends on Numbeo if you want to look at it. However, average local salaries have risen by almost 40% in the last 4 years, helped by the rises in the minimum wage put in place by central government, and that has ameliorated some of the problems for people. Also, reported prices for 2024 are in many cases lower than in 2023. What has risen massively in the last few years are rental prices and purchase prices of property, a trend that we've talked about previously on the blog, and again you can see in the show notes. Public transport, interest rates, sports and leisure, and internet access are actually cheaper now than were reported 14 years ago, and that's all about quality of life. Valencia is also the best value place to live in terms of cost of living outside of the Balkans in southern Europe, except for Braga in Portugal. However, it beats everywhere on the local purchasing power index. Wages in Portugal are generally lower outside of Lisbon and possibly Porto. And despite Pristina being affordable, it's not really an option, is it? The Balkans, they're not great. Valencia is the best ranked place in Spain and southern Europe in terms of quality of life. Spain as a whole does really well in this ranking, and that's because Spain has the balance between work, leisure and lifestyle down to a T. As one of our clients commented on our Facebook page last week, Spain doesn't have holidays, they have an endless holiday with occasional work breaks. When we take into account Europe as a whole, Valencia ranks 16th for total quality of life factors, behind, mostly, places in the Netherlands and Switzerland. But in those places you need a lot of money to live like that. Valencia also ranks first, and among those at the top for affordability and climate, and almost at the top for healthcare. Worldwide, Valencia ranks 18th, with only Adelaide and Brisbane breaking into the top 18 from outside Europe in terms of quality of life. Remember though, Numbeo is not the only ranking, although we do use it, and we use it a lot because it's the experience of people actually living in the places. Forbes magazine, through their rankings taken from the internation's respondents of immigrants around the world, also ranks Valencia as number 1 again. We always seem to be there, although we did go down to number 2 a few years ago. And yes, all of this can be found in our article, along with a whole lot more which you can find in the show notes. However, that's not all we wrote about in January and February. We talked about a proposed tax bombshell in January too. The TLDR is, don't worry about it yet, and if you are worried about it, then buy now. We then told you about what you're missing out on by not living in Spain. At the end of January, we did an article about our medium-term rentals in Valencia, Stepping Stone Rentals, with some examples of what was currently available. And here's a little bit from that article about why it was necessary to start the business of Stepping Stone Rentals. If you've been looking for a medium-term rental in Valencia, then you will know the world of pain that can be involved. There is little available, the owners won't accept foreigners, prices are off the scale or you have to pay ridiculous fees to the platform, looking at you Airbnb. Luckily, a couple of years ago, we solved the problem for many people through our sister company, Stepping Stone Rentals. Now in the article, we looked at some of the available properties on the Stepping Stone Rentals website as we move deeper into 2025, but that's a movable feast, it changes month by month. First though, let's go into the advantages of Stepping Stone Rentals for your Valencia medium-term rental. It's very difficult to find a long-term rental in Valencia, and short-term holiday rentals become very expensive very quickly once you go over the normal week or so. We came up with the concept of Stepping Stone Rentals as a halfway house between the two, to enable our clients to be able to rent out their properties securely while still getting to use them, and for people to try Valencia before they buy. Whether that is truly a buy in the sense of purchasing a property, or for those looking to secure a long-term rental without having to rush into a decision, or even fail to secure a place in a week's holiday rental, our Stepping Stone Rentals have a lot of advantages. Excellent prices. They're backed by Valencia Property with a superb reputation, having been in the market for over 25 years. No danger of being scammed. Facebook scams especially are huge for people looking for rentals. A fully transparent process of renting and payments, protection for both parties for payments and deposits, a good selection of available properties at any time, a welcoming service on arrival, full support during the rental period for both parties, no excessive fees to tenants, no long-term commitments, and the possibility of extension of the rental period when available and required. We also address any problems that come up immediately, and you are not supporting a faceless multinational. Again, looking at you Airbnb. Get to know more about Stepping Stone Rentals by going to our website and choosing your own Stepping Stone rental. As the market continued to go mad, we moved into February with an article about how quickly you have to decide when you're looking for a property. Blink and it's gone. This is now the 5th straight year of diminishing supply and more demand ever since we came out of COVID actually, so don't expect any changes soon. We then told you about what the notary does in a property transaction before moving on to letting you know why choosing the right bank is important and why ING Direct should not be that bank. Never use ING Direct for anything if you can avoid it. Our next post was about home decor and why there are other options apart from IKEA and what they are. And we started March with an article pointing out that luxury here costs a lot less than elsewhere and showing you properties that are available around the €1 million mark for those of you with deeper pockets. And yes, we know, for a lot of people this is a pipe dream, but for others this is pocket change after selling in other parts of the world. Wherever you stand on that spectrum, you can at least enjoy seeing some pretty spectacular property on the post. And all of these articles you can read in the show notes, of course. Regarding what's been going on in the market, we have many anecdotes from the last 2 months. The owner who listened to an agent trying to screw them over and went with an offer from that agent despite getting into a shouting match with them. The shoplifting maths genius in Paterna. The offers refused and renegotiated. The owners placing ridiculous prices on their properties and then getting offers on them. The mails we get starting with the words, "Yes, fuck Trump," before telling us how they wish to escape the States, and a whole lot more. How can you find out more about these things? Well, maybe listen to this podcast where we talk about these things a lot, or follow us on Blue Sky, not Twitter any longer, where we have deleted our account, and you get to see our threads on Blue Sky about weird things happening here in Valencia. Or just set up a call with me to discuss your move and how to work with us at Valencia Property. We'll be happy to chat with you. Earlier, we mentioned we'd be letting you know what has been interesting our potential clients on the website. What have people been looking at according to our analytics? The most popular properties in the last couple of months have been a house just outside Valencia, which is still available in Roca Cooper, although we did have a second visit at the weekend, a ground floor city apartment sold in a day, and the terrace you deserve in Rafael Buñol. The most popular articles are dominated by the most recent ones. They are given more airtime in our socials, of course. But the old favourites about international schools in Valencia, day trips out from Valencia, the best of Valencia's suburbs, and our guide to Valencia's 19 districts, a 4-part series on the blog, continue to perform well on search engines and therefore bring in lots of eyeballs. Before we finish though, let's tell you a little bit about what's going on in the background. And firstly, thanks for the messages last week letting me know about the site being down. It's good to know we have people trying to log into the site from all over the world. We've decided to move server because our current host doubled our price whilst at the same time consistently causing us problems with unexpected changes to their service, and it had basically become unacceptable. In consultation with our tech team, we decided enough is enough and to move servers. To do this is a bit of a faff. We set up a copy of the website at the new server and over a period of a couple of months made sure it could handle everything we wanted the site to do. In mid-February, we pressed the button to move and everything stopped. Mail's gone, redirections not working, photos disappeared, links not working, the whole works. After around 36 hours of chaos, we switched back to the previous server until everything was set up correctly. This week we tried to do the change again, and you didn't see any problems as the server changeover went like clockwork. Actually, that's not true. For some reason, the new server refuses to read one of our databases, so no move yet. So eventually we will be on a new server with greater capacity and better support. Bye-bye SiteGround, who kept giving our site downtime while wanted to charge us £70 per hour for tech support for a problem they themselves had caused. Nice work if you can get it. What have we got coming up this month? Well, more listings on our homepage of the Valencia property, more blog posts letting you know of everything about what's going on here in Valencia. We've just published one today, for example, as I'm recording this, about our holiday over Fallas, because we are now into the Fallas fiestas in Valencia, and really, it's not worth doing any work at that time because you can't get it done. We also publish a whole lot more on our socials. We are busy as ever, but we'll continue to support you in your move to Valencia and Spain. Contact us on information@valencia-property.com and we will start working together. But for now, that's it from the latest podcast from Valencia Property. We'll be back next month when we will be talking about the upcoming summer season and what to do if you are still hankering after your own Valencia property. Speak soon.